All right, guys, let's get into this development FRQ. I've heard some feedback from a few of you that this was a little bit tricky. This is exactly the kind of thing that you are going to see on the final AP test. And so let's walk through how to do this, how to dissect it, what to look for, and hopefully that will help to make it less tricky moving forward, okay? So first and foremost, the first thing I notice is that there are two stimulus. The stimulus is the map, okay? So this one's the first one, this one's the second one. When they give you two stimulus, it's an automatic heads up that you're going to have to use both of them, okay? The second thing I notice is, and I haven't even read the question yet. The second thing I notice, first one is a map of Argentina. And the second one is a map of Germany. That should be a heads up that these are different regions of the world. These are different levels of development. These are different types of economies, different types of climates, okay? So they're almost in opposition to each other, okay? We've got Argentina, which is developing, and we've got Germany, which is highly developed. Argentina's in South America, Germany's in Europe, okay? The next thing I notice, and again, I haven't even gotten to the question yet, is on the two maps, I see cities. The cities are marked with different types of symbols. I also see what looks to be roadways or possibly rivers, okay? You see scales down here. It gives you an indication of how far the roads are going to take you. And then the next thing I notice is your key right here. The key is giving you the population of the cities on the screen or on the in the stimulus. Big cities, slightly less big cities, a little bit fewer people cities. It's funny to say that a city of up to 2 million people is not that big, but not as big, right? The smallest city on here is 500,000 to just under 1 million. The largest city is 10 million and over. So this is a really good indication that these cities are huge population centers. It is also going to give me an idea that the population of these cities is going to have to play an integral role in my answer. And I also learn that the lines on the two maps are roads, okay? And as I'm looking at both the maps, I notice that the roadways in Germany seem much more extensive than the roadways in Argentina, okay? Now, this is all information that I have gleaned from what's offered to me before I even get to the question, okay? You want to take this stimulus in. You want to see what you can glean from it, what you can get from it, what it kind of is hinting at. So looking at these two maps, it's telling me that I'm going to need to compare in some way Argentina and Germany. I already know that there's a lot of difference between the two countries based on development, based on location, based on culture, all of those different kinds of components. The key tells me that I need to somehow incorporate population centers or city development. The roads tell me that the roads are going to have to play an integral role. Okay, so every piece of information that you are provided, you need to realize that that needs to be part of your answer. Okay, so now I'm going to get to the question. So the question says, discuss three. Oh, sorry, my tool is giving me troubles. Discuss, oh, that is not what I wanted to do. Hold on, rewind. There we go. Discuss three ways in which the concept of core-periphery relations helps explain the development of the urban systems shown above. Be sure to use evidence from both maps, which I already knew I was going to have to, right, to support each of your conclusions. So the best way, this is very AP lingo heavy, right? AP human geography lingo heavy. There's lots of terms in there. We're talking about core periphery relations, we're talking about development, we're talking about urban systems. But essentially, the best thing that I would do is I would take what you're given and rephrase it into your own words. Okay, so looking at this, I'm going to need 3, which means I'm going to start just a quick outline over here. 1, 2, 3. 3 ways in which the concept of core periphery relations. Core periphery relations. Well, what do I know about core periphery relations? That's Wallerstein. That you don't necessarily need to know that, although it might give you extra props if you mention it. Wallerstein's world systems theory is what this is. He's the one that said that the world is divided into 3 sections, essentially. The core, the semi-periphery, and the periphery. The core exports to the semi-periphery and the periphery. The periphery exports natural resources to the semi-periphery and to the core, and they import manufactured goods. And the semi-periphery does both. They export natural resources to the core and they import manufactured goods from the core, but they also export their own manufactured goods to the periphery. Okay, so it's that relationship. If you want to refer back to the actual visual, you're going to find it on slide 46 of the Unit 7 abbreviated Google Slides presentation. Okay, slides 45 and 46 explain core periphery, world systems theory. Okay, so, but essentially what core periphery is you've got the developed and the developing or undeveloped. We know obviously Europe is developed, so Germany's my developed example. Argentina, thus, is my developing example. So the first thing I'm going to want to do, just in my head, in my notes, is I'm going to label Germany as my core, and I'm going to label Argentina as my periphery. For these intents and purposes, you really don't need to get too much into is it periphery or is it semi-periphery. They're not going to dock you one way or the other, okay? Okay, so I'm looking at answering this question through this core periphery relationship. That's the lens that I have to examine. The development of the urban systems. Now, urban systems tell me a couple of things. It tells me city centers, right, or city locations, the presence of cities, but it also tells me infrastructure, right? Infrastructure is all of those roadways that you see in those maps. So, be sure to use evidence from both maps to support your conclusions. So now let me rephrase this. I'm going to discuss 3 ways in which the concept of the relationship between the core and the periphery explains the development of the urban systems that we see in these maps. So the developments of the cities and the developments of the roadways. Be sure to use evidence from both maps to support my conclusions. Okay, so now let's get into these maps. The first thing that I notice that kind of just pops right out is Germany's roadways are much more extensive than what I see in Argentina. Now, if I think to size of Germany and size of Argentina, Germany is a lot smaller. Now, this isn't necessarily something you guys would know off the top of your heads. This is sort of some additional background knowledge that I have. But you might realize that Argentina is one of the biggest countries in South America, second only to Brazil. You might realize that Germany, while being a big country for Europe, is actually a fairly standard-sized to small-sized country for the rest of the world, which again leads to this kind of emphasis on the roadway prevalence. And so I'm going to talk about roads roads. There we go. Germany, a lot. Argentina, not. The second thing I notice is the cities. Germany's got a lot more large cities. If I look at the populations of these cities, it looks like the biggest ones are these little squares, these guys. There's one in Hamburg, there's one in Berlin, there's one over here in Essen, one down here in Stuttgart. And those are between 2 and 6 million people. But there's a lot of them. Okay, so there's a fairly large number of people living in multiple urban centers throughout the country. The next thing I notice is how evenly spaced this is, right? If I actually look at how close I am, you know, it's fairly evenly spaced from one to the next. Then I've got some additional cities that are between 1 and 2 million at, we'll change colors, Munich's down here, Frankfurt, over here in Düsseldorf. Okay, again, fairly evenly spaced. I don't have anything that's included that's lower than that, and I don't have anything included that's higher than that. So based on the map of Germany, my largest cities potentially are just under 6 million. Now it doesn't, obviously 2 to 6 million is a fairly widespread, so it doesn't give me specifics, but it does tell me that none of those are megacities, right? None of them have a population over 10 million. It also tells me that none of them are primate cities. Now remember, primate cities are the cities where you have just one ginormous city and then everything around it is much, much smaller. We often find primate cities in developing countries. Mexico City specifically is a really great example of primate cities, but you also find them in other developing countries as well. So this isn't a primate. Germany's not a primate city. This actually looks a lot more like rank size rule. Rank size rule, remember, is you've got the biggest city that is a certain population, and then the second biggest city is 1/2, the third biggest city is 1/3 the size of the biggest city. Remember, this is the 1 to the nth idea. Germany looks like it could potentially be an example of rank size. Okay, so my second thing I'm going to mention is city structure. Germany, rank size. And then let's get into Argentina. Argentina over here, okay. So the biggest city is Buenos Aires, which is the capital, that makes sense. But it's big, it's 10 million or over. So that tells me that Buenos Aires is a really, really, really big city, okay? The other cities that are on the map, we have Rosario here, and Cordoba over here, and then we have Mendoza over here. So it looks like Rosario and Cordoba are both in the 1 to 2 million, and Mendoza is 500,000 to just under 1 million, while Buenos Aires is 10 million and up. Okay, it's a big, big city. Now, this setup right here is the perfect example of rank size, or not, sorry, not rank size, it's primate. It's a great example of primate cities. So the second point, if I talk over here in my city structures, for Argentina, I would say that Argentina is set up as a primate city. Example. Or they have primacy, is the way you would say it in a noun format. If I get further into urban systems, I could additionally talk about the location of the cities. You'll notice, and I find this quite interesting, but if I'm looking at Germany, none of the cities in Germany are in the middle. They're all on the periphery of the actual country. Now, if you are familiar with the geography, if you will, of Germany, the physical geography, you know that up here, this is a port. Over here, Essen is a port. This takes me into the Baltic. This takes me up, or sorry, this takes me into, is it the Baltic? I think it might be the Baltic. This one takes me up into the Norwegian Sea, or not, what is that one? Oh, you guys are testing me on my geography. But these are both water ports, okay? They're both on a coast. Down here, Stuttgart and Berlin are both close, and I can even add Munich in there as well. They're both close to borders of other countries. So all of this suggests that the location of cities in Germany are positioned really strategically for trade. And specifically in Germany, the trade is extensive. It is countrywide. I'm running out of room. Countrywide. If I look over here in Argentina, I'll notice that the way the cities are set up, they all almost lend themselves towards the progression into Buenos Aires. The only city in Argentina on this map that's actually on a coast is Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is a huge port city. The rest of them are not super significant in terms of trade. Mendoza over here does look like it probably borders, or at least closely borders, Chile. But again, it's the smallest city on our map. And so this kind of puts all of Argentina's eggs in one basket, which would suggest that so this is Germany up here, that Argentina's trade network is still developing. Buenos Aires is the only port, which suggests basically everything runs through that, which makes sense, right? Because we know that Buenos Aires is their primate city. When you talk about trade in this sense, you can also tie roads back into it. The road network in Germany is extensive. It's, it connects all of these different cities. You can tell that those roads go into different countries. So you know that the network is wide and integrated, not just within Germany, but also within bordering countries, so that the trade is going to expand beyond just the country of Germany. Argentina, you see a few roads that take you out of the country. But again, most of them seem to be kind of centered and directed towards Buenos Aires. Okay, that's a lot. It's one FRQ. You'll notice we're 20 minutes in, just about, and this is essentially the deconstruction of an FRQ. Now, this is how I would answer it. These are the things that I notice when I first look at the FRQ. What is it asking me? What is the context that I'm supposed to answer? So it's asking me for three ways, right? The context is the core periphery relations. And then the things I'm explaining are the development of urban systems. Now, all of these things, again, you would want to make sure that you would tie back into that core periphery. It makes sense that Germany has lots of roads and extensive trade because they're in the core. Argentina has fewer roads and less integrated and extensive trade networks because they're in the periphery. The city structures for Germany follow rank size rule, which makes more sense for a core country, whereas Argentina has a primate city, is a primate city example because you find primate cities again in periphery or developing countries. Okay, so you would answer all of these components in that core periphery lens. Now, these are three. If you looked in the rubric, which most of you did because that was part of your assignment, but the rubric goes into additional things that you could talk about. It gives, so if I'm scoring myself based on what I just wrote down, now obviously this is an outline and a fairly rough and sloppy one, frankly. If I'm writing it out, these obviously would be the pieces that I would include. So it's looking for me to use examples from both maps as well as the actual ways that the core periphery explains the development of the urban systems. And so the things that it lists are this concept of primacy. Primate cities are economically dominant, which you would obviously mention when you're talking about Buenos Aires and the way that Argentina is organized. You could also include that primate cities were colonial economic hubs. Primate cities are sort of this holdover from colonial days, which is why you find so many of them in Latin America especially, because obviously they were colonized. And so you have that sort of colonial legacy. It talks about rank size rule and how Germany could be an example of that. And it says the rank size rule reflects a mature, integrated global core economy, which is again what we were talking about. It talks about the road systems, specifically the road systems in Argentina, that the global periphery road systems are built for an export-oriented economy. Okay, so we talked about how all of the roads seem to tie back to Buenos Aires, lead to and from. There really aren't a whole lot of roads taking you other places in the country. And then the road systems in Germany, in the global core and integrated road system supports an advanced complex economy. So obviously you see the network of roads within Germany between all of the cities, as well as roads that lead them to other countries, which again suggests that idea of an integrated, advanced, complex economy outside, the borders of Germany. It talks about going back to the rubric, it talks about ports or points of entrance. Hamburg, border cities of Germany. It gives examples. Ports are nodes of economic activity, control, and coordination. Again, if you have a port, that suggests that you are shipping things in and out, which means you have to coordinate with other countries and other organizations to do that. And then it talks about city size. Specifically, Argentina, core power diminishes with distance from core. So this idea of distance decay. Now, that is one thing that I didn't mention. Although it does make sense, right? The further you are from Buenos Aires, the less influence you have, the less control Buenos Aires has over you. You don't really see that with Germany because of how evenly spaced their population centers are. Those population centers are going to play an integral role across the country because of their almost strategic location, right? But Buenos Aires on the coast, so the further inland you get, the less influence Buenos Aires is going to have. So those are the different points that are included in the rubric. The notes underneath the rubric do say that 6-point answers, meaning you could get a potential 6 points out of this particular FRQ, must have referred to both Argentina and Germany, which we already knew because it gives us 2 stimulus, so we know we have to use both. and that if you only use one country, you actually lose a point. And then it does give acceptable synonyms for primate include 2 times the next largest city, the majority of the population, a dominant city. Unacceptable for primate city synonyms would include megacity, large city, or largest city. They want you to use the more specific AP geography lingo, okay? I hope that helped. If it did, please, please, please just write some really quick feedback on the video that I'm going to post. I would really appreciate knowing if this is something that will help you guys as we go into doing more of these, obviously over the next 2 weeks, to help get you ready for the actual AP test. My goal is to do whatever it is that I think will help you the best, or that you think will help you the best. But because this year is such a different and unique and singular year, I'm not entirely sure what that is. And so if it helps you to have me, take FRQs and dissect them and go through my thought process with you, I am happy to do these over and over and over again. I obviously have lots of FRQs that I can pull. I would also like to have you guys continue to practice. So maybe what I'll do, if you think this is helpful, is I'll post an FRQ as an assignment, have you guys respond to it, and then you know how in the discussions you can't see everybody else's answer until you post your own answer? So maybe I'll have you post your own answer, and then once you post it, I will actually have a post there as well, and you can access my post and see it. And then I'll have you grade yourself, because I think it's good for you to see exactly what's on the rubric, how those rubrics work. And hopefully as we do more and more of these, they will become easier. You'll be less intimidated by them. You'll feel like you have more information to pull. But yeah, I think these help. Let me know, give me some feedback, and whatever it is you guys think I need to do to help the best or help the most, I will do that. Okay? Talk soon. Take care. Don't stress. Oh, I do want to say that. Don't stress. Please realize that literally every single other AP Human Geography student in the entire world is in the exact same boat you are. There are actually a significant number of AP Human Geography students in China that haven't been in school since January. They left for Chinese New Year break and never went back. And so it's not just us. Also realize that those same students in China, the test that you guys are taking on May 12th at 2 p.m., that test is that time worldwide. So if you happen to live in Hawaii, which is 4 hours earlier than we are, they are taking that test at 10 a.m. If you happen to live in London, England, and you're taking the test, London is 7 hours later than we are, then they are taking the test at 9 o'clock at night. And if you are unfortunately a student of AP Human Geography and you are taking the test in China, you live in China, some of them are waking up at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning to take their AP Human Geography test. So please don't stress. Please don't worry. Please don't let that ginormous list of videos and review videos that I posted freak you out or overwhelm you. They're simply there as resources. If you feel like you have a good handle on those specific units, then don't watch them. Do the rest, or do the others. Obviously focus your efforts on the places where you feel like you need the review. Anyway, let me know about these. I hope they're helpful. I'm happy to keep doing them. They're actually kind of fun. So, and now I've figured out the best way to do it. I think this is the best way to do it anyway. Anyway, let me know. Take care, and I will talk to you guys later.